Once upon a time, there was an honest man named Hans. He was known for his kind heart and his cheerful personality. Hans lived in a small cottage, surrounded by the most beautiful garden you could imagine. His garden was filled with a variety of flowers, herbs, and plants: sweet williams, carnations, shepherd's purses, violets, crocuses, rosemary, basil, and daffodils bloomed in his garden every month. The air always smelled fresh and wonderful, and it was a peaceful place where Hans spent most of his time working and tending to the plants. Hans had many friends, but his best friend was a wealthy miller who lived nearby. The miller was a generous man, always talking about the importance of true friendship and selflessness. "True friends share everything," he would often say. Every time the miller passed by Hans's garden, he would pick some flowers, herbs, or fruits. The miller was so proud of his friendship with Hans, and Hans was always happy to have such a noble friend. However, there was something strange about their friendship. While the miller always took from Hans, he never seemed to give anything back. The neighbors noticed this and thought it was odd, but Hans didn't mind. He enjoyed the miller's company and believed in the beautiful words the miller spoke about friendship. As the seasons changed, Hans continued to work hard in his garden, and in spring, summer, and fall, his life was full of bounty. However, during the cold winter months, Hans had nothing to sell. He didn't have the flowers and fruits he usually sold at the market, so he often went hungry. The winter was also a lonely time for Hans, because the miller never visited him during the cold months. "There's no point in visiting Hans when there's snow," the miller would say to his wife. "When someone is struggling, it's better to leave them alone. I'll visit him when spring comes, and then he can give me a basket of roses. That will cheer him up." The miller's wife, though kind-hearted, agreed with her husband, and even their son suggested inviting Hans to their house during the winter. "If he's hungry, he can have some of my porridge," said the miller's son. But the miller dismissed the idea. "Don't be foolish," he said. "If Hans sees us sitting by the warm fire with delicious food, he will get jealous, and his character will be ruined. Besides, he might ask for some flour on credit, and I can't do that. Flour is flour, and friendship is friendship. We shouldn't mix the two." The miller's words seemed wise to him, and so the winter passed with no visits to Hans. But when spring arrived and the roses in Hans's garden started to bloom, the miller felt it was time to visit his friend. "You have such a good heart," his wife said, as she reminded him to bring a big basket for the flowers. So the miller set off, carrying a large basket to fill with Hans's beautiful roses. "Good morning, Hans," the miller greeted him. "How was your winter?" Hans smiled and replied, "It was hard, but I'm glad it's spring, and my flowers are blooming again." "We talked about you often this winter," the miller continued. "We wondered how you were doing." Hans, who had feared the miller might have forgotten about him, smiled with gratitude. "That's kind of you to think of me," he said. "I thought you might have forgotten." "How could I forget?" the miller exclaimed. "True friendship never forgets. By the way, these roses look lovely." Hans nodded proudly. Yes, they are beautiful this year. I'm planning to sell them to the mayor's daughter so I can buy back my wheelbarrow. The miller was surprised. You sold your wheelbarrow? He asked, shocked. How foolish of you. I had no choice, Hans replied sadly. I had no money for bread, and I had to sell it. The miller's eyes twinkled. Don't worry, he said. You can have my wheelbarrow. It's missing a side, and the wheel is broken, but you can still use it. I'm sure it's a generous gift, and people might think I'm crazy, but I believe true friends share everything. Besides, I bought a new one. Hans was overjoyed. That's incredibly kind of you, he said. I can easily fix it with a piece of wood I have at home. The miller frowned. A piece of wood? He asked. Well, that's exactly what I need to fix my roof. Isn't it amazing how one good deed leads to another? The miller smiled and continued. Of course, the wheelbarrow is worth more than the wood, but a true friend doesn't keep track of such things. Take the wheelbarrow, and I'll get to work on the roof. Hans, feeling so grateful, took the wood from the miller's hands. The miller looked at it and said, It's not very big. I'm afraid there won't be enough left to fix the wheelbarrow after I repair my roof, but it doesn't matter. You take the wheelbarrow, and I'll get to work right away. The next day, the miller returned to Hans's house. Can you help me carry a heavy bag of flour to the market and sell it? He asked. I'm sorry, but I'm very busy today, Hans replied. There's a lot to do in the garden. The miller seemed disappointed. I find it rather unfriendly of you to refuse, he said. After all, I gave you my wheelbarrow. Oh no, I don't want to be unfriendly, Hans said, and he set off to carry the bag of flour. He worked hard all day and, exhausted, collapsed into bed that evening. He thought to himself, I'm glad I didn't refuse the miller. He's my best friend, and he gave me his wheelbarrow. That was so generous. The next morning, the miller came to collect the money for the flour, but Hans was still in bed, tired from carrying the heavy load the day before. Unbelievable, you are so lazy, the miller said. Since I gave you my wheelbarrow, you should work harder. Good friends should be able to say unpleasant things to each other. Hans, feeling guilty, said, I'm sorry. I was so tired from carrying the flour that I stayed in bed a little longer. Well, get out of bed, said the miller. I need you to fix my roof now. Hans didn't want to argue with his friend, so he agreed. He was hoping to get back to his garden, but he didn't want to seem unfriendly. Is it unfriendly if I say I'm busy? Hans asked. It's not too much to ask, said the miller. After all, you're getting my wheelbarrow. No, no, cried Hans, and he worked all day on the miller's roof. There is nothing more beautiful than working for others, the miller said. But you must rest now. Tomorrow, I need you to herd my sheep up the mountain. The next day, Hans went to herd the sheep, though he was tired from all the previous work. This continued for days. The miller would always ask Hans for help, and Hans would always agree. He felt uncomfortable at times, but he kept reminding himself that the miller was his best friend, and that he had given him the wheelbarrow. One evening, the miller knocked on Hans's door, his face filled with panic. My son fell off a ladder, he said. I was on my way to the doctor, but the storm is so bad, I thought you should go instead. After all, you're getting my wheelbarrow. So it seems fair that you help me." "Of course," Hans said. "I'll go right away. But can I borrow your lantern? It's so dark outside, and I'm afraid I might fall into a ditch." "I'm sorry," the miller replied, "but the lantern is brand new, and I don't want anything to happen to it." So Hans set off into the storm, walking for hours until he finally reached the doctor. The doctor quickly agreed to come, and Hans returned home. But the storm grew worse, and Hans lost his way. He fell into a deep hole in the bog and drowned. The next morning, a goatherd found Hans's body. The whole town mourned his death. Everyone came to his funeral, and the miller was the most grief-stricken. "I was his best friend," the miller said, wiping his tears. "I deserve the best place at the funeral." As he walked at the front of the procession, the miller thought about how much he had lost. After the funeral, the blacksmith remarked, "Little Hans was a great loss to everyone." "Absolutely," the miller replied. "I was about to give him my wheelbarrow, and now I don't know what to do with it.